get started here. Hi, everyone. I'm Jerry McHugh, Jr., President of San Juan Resources. Welcome to this San Juan Prospect IQ on our Mancos Oil Project, 25,000 acres. I want to introduce Rich Bosher. He's on the bottom of the screen. He's done the geological work for us. And at the top is Duncan Shepherd. He's done the work for us on engineering, reservoir production, all sorts of stuff. Both gentlemen have extensive experience, not only in the Rockies, but in other areas too. But they've helped San Juan for over 12 years, I think, at this point. Drilling in the San Juan Mancos oil, where estimated recoveries are 600 to 800 MBOE with 65% recovery attributable to oil. It is my goal to introduce you to our Mancos oil project and to invite you to look at this in more detail and considering partnering with San Juan Resources. So it's great to have you on the call. We know how valuable your time is, so we'll keep things to about 45 to 50 minutes. Today, we are going to focus on the Prospect IQ, and it's simply showing our San Juan drilling development, oil and high BTU gas project. Many think the San Juan is locked up HBP. However, we've shown there are leases to get and ways to get a lot of land put together here. We have leased massed 40,000 acres across the basin in the past 10 plus years. Here's an orientation map of the San Juan where we've operated wells, projects, and had specifics we'll discuss today. You can see the Colorado-New Mexico border. They're just above the San Juan Basin. These are mostly deep wells that we show in here. We operate, the lion's share of our wells are on Aztec, New Mexico, here in Farmington, and then some down by Lindrith, where we'll be showing the project. We also have a big gas project in the Carson Forest, and we'll be having a Prospect IQ on that in about a month. There's 20 BCFE of Mancos wells, significant potential there. We also wanted to highlight the fact that in the past 4 years, there's a lot of new operators and companies in the San Juan. Corp is shown on this map in pink. They bought out the lion's share of the ConocoPhillips production. And the next slide, please. There we go. Conoco and Phillips had put this acres together, sold out. Much of this was also Burlington Resources, which had been the previous El Paso Natural Gas. Operating these assets, Hillcorp has done a lot of workovers. They've worked hard and done very well optimizing their production. ICAV is in blue. They're a recent entry into the San Juan Basin, where they operate 4,000 wells with about 4,000 non-operating. It's just been over a year since they bought from the former Amoco BP San Juan assets of about 600 million feet of gas per day. Enduring had bought out Chevron and then added WPX Mancos oil properties, and they are shown in yellow here. DJR Energy in green bought out Elmridge and Canada entered the basin about 2.5 years ago. Recent reports is that they've worked on 8 of their DUCs from last year and completing these as Mancos horizontal laterals. DJR will resume Mancos horizontal drilling late spring. And then there's Lagos Resources. They acquired the WPX Rosa Gas assets and some of these north properties here, and then acquired Energen in the oil window to the south. Lagos is planning on drilling 2 to 4 in the gas window and 2 to 4 in the oil window, and they just put a rig out there this past week. And then there's EOG Resources. They have put 3 to 4 townships together in a play here in the southern part, just south of the Jicarillas. They have at least 41 approved locations and plan on drilling on this newly constructed pad. They have production unit, a flare stack set up here. Quite the operation that they have there. So in our San Juan Basin, we've got this oil and gas condensate window map. Here's the area where we've located across the San Juan. Shows gas window in the north area. We're heating from the San Juan Mountains and the mountain building to the north. Turns into condensate, or NGLs, as some people say. And then the oil window, which we'll be focusing on today, is in the south. Reserve estimates for the gas are greater than 100 TCF from the Mancos alone. And estimates are that the oil window will have up to 2 billion barrels of oil. The San Juan Basin's century will culminate this October. And today we've produced 448 million barrels of oil and 54 TCF of gas. So this basin will produce far more oil and gas with fewer wells in the next century. And I think that is significant for this basin. As we look at the Lindra's production map, here we put these lands together in the Mancos oil play, aggregating 25,000 acres, surrounded by 50 million barrels of oil. And you can see up to the north, here's Cañado Hitos. This is an isopac oil map here. And Gavilan is to the north here in West Lindrith. And it's also surrounded by 250 billion cubic feet of gas, not only just from the Mancos Dakota, but Pictured Cliffs and other formations too. This is our plan to initially unitize in two areas, one up here in the Lindrith area, and then we also unitize down here in the south. Federal exploratory units will drill 1 or 2 1-mile laterals and one obligation well per unit. Our plan is a full development project with an additional 5 wells through 2023. Initial 8/8 cost for 2020 for next year is about $6 million per well, or 12 million total. And then we'll continue to prove up the Mancos in 2023 with 5 additional wells, or another $25 to $28 million costs, which will lower with efficiencies and pad drilling. We have had discussions with the minerals branch unit group at BLM, and we'll continue working to get our units designated. We think this is a great spot for both of these laterals, geologically and geographically. We have NEPA approval for pads on each of these units, and then we can enlarge the pads, have capability of 4 to 6 additional wells on each of the pads. In fact, our southern pad in the Regina area, San Juan Resources owns the 10 acres of surface for this initial unit pad. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I discussed our drilling and permits with the district manager of the Farmington Field Office. He tells me that the BLM will approve these wells for which we will be applying. And we've gotten valid existing leasing rights, so we'll go through the process, get the wells approved and the units approved. So we think we're in a great position regulatory wise. So that's my introduction, and I want to turn things over to Rich so he can talk geology. Okay, Rich.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. And this map that you're seeing is basically all the gas and the oil fields, oil wells in the San Juan Basin. I stripped off the Fruitland coal and the Mesa Verde. So really, you're just looking at, I believe, Dakota gas, Mancos gas and oil. And there's a couple interesting things to point out here. I've got this mapped on the Dakota, so you can see that the basin is, it rises steeply to the east on the Nacimiento uplift. Then it rises to the west to the Four Corners area, then to the north at the San Juan Mountains into Colorado, and then the Chaco Plain, a gradual slope to the south. The axial portion of the basin is this blue line right here. And the Dakota, basically the Dakota is approximately 7,000 to 8,000 feet deep. So 7,000 to 8,000 feet, roughly 7,000 feet of sediments. And then there's a Paleozoic section, relatively untested beneath it. Key areas to point out here, this is the San Juan Resources Mancos oil play in Southeast San Juan Basin that we're talking about today. And just over to the west, you can see these are purple lateral designations or wells. This is the bulk of the enduring DJR lateral Mancos play that's currently ongoing today. Previously, it was drilled and owned by Encana and WPX. And the important point that I want to bring up is that this area today, it's probably over 100 laterals in here. It's making about 17,000 barrels a day between enduring and DJR at the as of 2020. And they are getting some monster wells in here. There's some 700 barrel oil EUR wells with a BCF plus of gas coming out of here. So with technology over the past 5 basically to 8 years, DGR and Enduring has really upped the technology game here, like they have in other basins, other operators in other basins where EURs have consistently been rising. We believe our area is an analog to the DJR and Enduring area over here to the central portion. And I do want to point out, and you see this frequently over the over my slides, the Hickory Indian Reservation is right in between us. All of our lands are completely off the Hickory. We're just either fee or mostly federal. I just want to point out that the pay zones we'll be looking at here, this is essentially the Mesozoic, the Cretaceous, the Tertiary section is up here. We're going to be focused primarily on the Cretaceous. The Mancos Shale, we're going to be looking for interbedded fine-grained sandstones and siltstones within the Mancos. That most of this oil is produced out of that you see all around the eastern, the southeastern, the southern, and the western part of the basin here. We also have production from the Dakota. You get both oil at the fringes, and you get quite a bit of gas in the center of the basin. We've got production out of the Mesa Verde group, and there's primarily gas production out of the Fruitland coal at the top of the Cretaceous and the Picture Cliffs sandstone just below it. But we're going to focus today just on the Mancos Shale here. Again, I just want to reiterate, we're 25,000 acres. Jerry pointed out 40% HBP, 40% fee. Our TVDs are roughly 6,200 to 7,000 feet. And some of Duncan's calculations he'll talk about earlier, but I can't help but saying them now. This is a PV15 with an 80% NRI of over $500 million with a rate of return over 70%. And I'll let Duncan talk about that in a few minutes. So let's take a look at the basin. This is USGS data. This is an isopac over the Mancos Shale. And you can see this is this is a 2,000 foot contour interval line. So 2,000 feet of thermally mature, hydrocarbon rich Mancos Shale, basically 1% to over 5% total organic content. We're in the oil window here, 0.6 to 0.95 RO thermal maturity. And we're in the type 2 kerogen, which produces both oil and gas. And we are right in the heart of the thickest part of the Mancos Shale here. A couple other things to point out on this slide before I let you go. We get to the next slide. This is essentially the enduring DJR area where they're currently drilling and producing out of those lateral Mancos wells. These green symbols here, I want to point out, this is 50 million barrels of oil that surrounds our area on the north, the west, and the south. And then Nacimiento Uplift is off to the east here. This is east and west Puerto Chiquito field, 20 million barrels of oil out of the Mancos, found and developed by Benson Montaigne Greer, starting as early back as the 60s. This is the Gavilan field, 8 million barrels of oil in the Mancos. And Jerry's dad had a hand in this discovery as well. This is the Lindrith field. This is 20 million barrels of oil. And by the way, this is all vertical wells here. This is 20 million barrels of oil out of the Dakota and the Mancos, West Lindrith. And then down to the south here is the Rio Puerco field, 1.5 million barrels of oil out of the Mancos as well. So let me move on. So bringing you down a little further into zoning into the southeast area, This is roughly 25,000 acres that Jerry has been talking about, fee and state, and quite a bit of it HBP. Again, I'm just pointing out the 20 million barrels of oil coming out of the East and West Puerto Chiquito field, Gavilan, West Lindrith, 20 million barrels of oil. Down here to the south, 1.5 million barrels of oil. This is the activity by Enduring and DJR. You can see the laterals that they have put in and their predecessors in Canada and WPX has put in as well. And I do want to point out EOG is going to go rocking and rolling down here. They basically permitted 41 wells, and it looks to me at least that their first well, a lateral into the Mancos, is fairly imminent to be drilled. So we feel we're in a great area. We've got some good analogs I'm going to show you here, and we've got some great players in the area as well. Now I'm going to just show you what a cross section looks like so you can see what the sediments on log control looks like across the area. So we can go from west to the east and then down to the south through Jerry's area in here. This is that cross section. So this well is going to be in the Enduring WPX area, and all these wells are going to be in Jerry's or the San Juan Resources area over to the east. And I want to point out, you see resistivity typically and a gamma ray, possibly an SP in some cases, from all the old vertical wells that were drilled in the area. And these are the key zones that we have basically mapped and interpreted in the area. This the nomenclature differs to a degree. I believe DGR calls this the Manco Silt. It's a very quiet area that has been historically above the pay zones, but they're going after currently today and getting some good oil production. I'll call this both the Manco Silt in their area, our area. So we're going, again, west to east, Enduring WPX, Enduring DJR over to San Juan Resources. I will call this the Mancos Niobrara A. You can see the high resistivity in here, and basically those are high resistive fine-grained sands and siltstones encased in that rich Manco shale. And these are very correlable around the area all the way from west to east. This is a high resistivity package calling the Mancos Niobrara B. And then this is the Mancos Niobrara C. And then it gets quiet again down to an area, we'll talk later in a discussion about the Sinosti and Juana Lopez, which looks productive as well. Now I want to point out all these purple guys, these are the perfs. So typically over in our area and over in the area to the west, this is what the historical operators opened up and produced that 50 million barrels of oil from, the A, the B, and the C. So I've already talked about the 50 million barrels of oil that surrounds our project for the north, and from vertical wells from the north, the west, and there's Rio Puerco in the south, 1.5 million barrels of oil. But I want to talk about a couple things. Mostly I want to talk about the actual oil production we have in our area, which I consider, I'll just call them great show wells. And then I'll also talk about this map here, the color here is the, we picked resistivities over in that A, B, and C package, anything over 30 ohms. And so this is an isopack of feet above 30 ohms of that high resistive sands and siltstones and shale within our area. And you see right in the heart of our area, this area right in here, the top two townships and all the way this third township down here. Basically, we have over 100 feet of high resistive Mancos interval of, again, the fine-grained sand, siltstones, and shale. So we're in a very thermally, geothermally mature area. We're in the oil zone here, and we've got a lot of source rock interbedded between these sands and silts. So, and you can see even as it thins to the south, we're down to about 20 to 30 feet of high resistive rock. It still produced 1.5 million barrels of oil out of the Rio Puerco field. And the traps are here relatively, they're going to be stratigraphic. It's big fracturing up to the north that doesn't move down to the south, or else we would have found some giant oil wells down to the south. But we're going to have a fairly quiet, structurally quiet area with faulting and fracturing there. As you come out into the basin and things are fairly structurally quiet. This is the Ingerson Federal 4 well, was drilled in 1959. They had a DST of some gas out of the Mancos interval. They sold it to a small mom and pop operator. He came in 1966, popped it open, and made 68,000 barrels of oil out of the Mancos, I call it the Mancos B interval. That's not a bad show well. And all the way down to the south here, where again, and I'm just posting up oil wells here, not the Picture Cliff gas wells, which are stratigraphically higher in the column. Talk about a couple wells here: the Regina well, and then also the Romero well, of which San Juan Resources owns and currently operates. This Romero well, I believe, drilled in the mid like 2007. There it is. I think that's it. Yeah, 2007. This was a deeper test to the Entrada, and they didn't find what they were looking for, and they came up hole and completed the well in the Mancos interval. And this well, basically with a very light frac, I believe, and I'll show it to you a little bit later. This well has made about 30,000 barrels of oil to date, and we have a cum on this of 60,000 barrels of oil in the Manco section. This well, the Regina well, it was actually drilled before the Romero well, and they actually put a bridge plug. You know, they did a swab test on the Mancos. They had great oil shows on it. And basically, they put a bridge plug on this and came up and completed in the Picture Cliff sandstone. San Juan Resources came in here about a year and a half ago, opened up the zone, and we have basically the same well that they have at Romero. This thing is currently making 2 to 3 barrels of oil a day, but we expect that this thing over time will basically have a very similar EUR of about 60,000 barrels of oil. So we got two great show wells, vertical wells that were never completed or were never designed to seriously test the Mancos. We've got this sitting right in our area in here. So we're feeling pretty good about production around our area in the Mancos, and we're feeling pretty dang good about production with great show wells within our area. We've got 3 zones, 3 potential zones, and possibly several more on that. So it's going to be quite a bit more than the wells you actually see on this slide zone here. And now I want to just show you what some of the, anyway, that's what full development looks like potentially. And I want to now just move you to a couple analogs we brought over. First, what I'm going to do is show you a cross section through 3 old vertical wells to the west, across the Jicarilla to 3 wells over in our area to the east. And I'm going to come back to this well in a second. And again, taking a closer look at these guys, I can do that. Yeah, there's the Mancos B. Let's see if I can move this over. And there's the Mancos B over to the west. It's a very, very good correlation here. So let's keep moving ahead here. So I want to show you the first well in the Mancos B, the Good Times DO6 23091H. This is the top. There's the top of the Mancos B right in here, and they basically put that lateral just right underneath it in the Mancos B right over here, and we have that same exact section over here to the east. That well, we've got an EUR of over 361,000 barrels of oil and over a BCF of gas, and that's the production curve that Duncan put together for that DO6 2309 well. So that's one of our first analogs. These are these big Nageezi wells that we feel we have similar rock over in our area. I want to point out just one of these wells. This is an old vertical well I'm using to tie in, show where the lateral hit, the South Huerfano #1 well. This is the top of the Mancos or Gallup C well. They put the lateral down here. And this guy is 846,000 barrels of oil EUR and a 2.1 BCF. And we feel we've got very similar rock over in our area to the east. So essentially, those are the key zones in the Mancos, but I also want to point out beneath the Mancos A, B, and the C is the Juana Lopez Sanasti interval. So I think in summary, I want to point out our 25,000 acres here. The similarities structurally, we think we've got a very similar area, a quiet structural area as they do to the west here in the DJR. enduring area. Thermal maturity and source rock richness is going to be very similar, maybe a little bit better in our area over to the east versus the west. The difference is we do have massive vertical oil production here versus off to the west here. We've got great shows in our area here. We've got a little bit of a thicker package of these fine-grained sands and silts and a thicker package of the Mancos source rock. And we are about 1,000 feet deeper in our area to the east as opposed to the west here. And we think we've got great analogs through multiple zones that we see in the DJR enduring area as we do to the east here. And I do want to point out 25,000 net acres, TVDs 6,200 to 7,000 feet. Duncan's economics at PV15 kind of north of $500 million and great rates of return.
Can you talk, Rich, about some of the evidence of high natural fractures, the intensity? How are we similar, dissimilar to COU, Kenyatta heat host? And then there is also a question, any induced seismicity from the Nacimiento uplift. And I think, you had some things on that with this.
Yeah, great.
We thought we were a lot seismically quieter than, so you could explain a lot better than I can.
Sure. Yeah, let me blow this up and I'll take a look at it. So, there was one of the issues that we wanted to address. This is a block diagram of our area and the big oil production to the north with east and west Puerto Chiquito. So this is south, this is north, and this is going to be east. This is the Nacimiento uplift, and then DJR enduring area is off to the west here. So there's a really excellent structural study done on Nacimiento uplift. It was done by a grad student at Rice University. And then we've also had some verbal communication from ConocoPhillips, who did structural work in the area. And on top of that, we do have some old 2D seismic that runs across this area here, Kenyatta Ojitos unit. And we have looked at some seismic down here to the south. And the upshot is that the way I see it is that the structural uplift on a Nacimiento uplift, Nacimiento, it's been much greater in the south than it has just to the north near the east and west Puerto Chiquito field. And there's been a lot more structural shortening to the south than there is to the north. And what's been interpreted and identified is that most of the uplift in the southern area has probably been accommodated by one large or several large uplifts, whereas to the north, with the lesser degree of shortening and less uplift, the uplift has been accommodated with multiple smaller scale fractures, certainly compared to the south, that have a greater areal extent. And so what's happened as you come off the Nacimiento uplift to the north is that these fractures basically have created oil storage for these large fields here, East Puerto Chiquito, West Puerto Chiquito, to a degree, Gavilan too. We just do not believe or see that these large fractures basically continue down to the south here. And for the reasons I've just been talking about, one is that if they had continued down to the south, some of the wells, some of these wells are 1 to 2 million barrels of oil up to the north in east and west Puerto Chiquito. We do not see anything like that down to the south. The best well I talked about down to the south, there was 68,000 barrels of oil. Most of these vertical tests down here are anywhere between 15 or 20,000 barrels of oil. So we just, drilling wise, we don't see that these fractures have continued to the south. And I think we understand why, because basically most of the accommodation has been taken up by relatively one large fracture system, right next to the Nacimiento lift. And so we feel that we'll have fractures down here, but I think they're going to be very subtle as they are over to the west, over in the DJR enduring area. And we've also looked at some of the seismic, the 2D seismic. The fracturing is very evident up here to the north, and it's relatively quiet down here to the south. So we think basically to extract this oil, you're going to have modern day fracs through your laterals to get the same results as you have to the west. That's my current understanding of the structural setting.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that we bought the leases and started buying in 2012. We saw that the Mancos wells in our area weren't heavily fractured. The Gavilan, you get north of 50,000 barrels, 100,000 barrels up as you get up into 25.2. Just the northern part of 24.2, I think the best well is maybe 100 and some thousand. But as you go south, those turn into cumes of 6,000, 14,000, and they just really, they weren't Gavilan, that's for sure.
I'll keep it a little brief because we're at a time level here. Mostly echoing what Rich had said. This is a basin that started a little later, mostly because the acreage is HBP, but now you've got these excellent operators in there. And what they're doing is they're not only showing successful wells, they're also showing improvement with time and technology. And like every other basin, they're figuring out the different benches at different intervals. We've got silts above the Niobrara, we've got the Niobrara, we've got silts below it. So, the raw data, you got 2014 wells, some Liebrook wells, 1 mile laterals, 163,000 barrel EURs. Coming up to 2017, these are true Niobrara wells. You've got wells like the Good Times, that's about a 360,000 barrel EUR. The first wells had lighter fracs. The Good Times has, even that's slightly light, 5 million pounds of sand over 17 stages. Then they're figuring out the Manco silt, that Liebrook 718H Rich described, 413,000 barrel EURs, because they put in 9.5 million pounds of sand over 38 stages. And then finally, the Nageezi wells Rich described, 2017, 2018. These are 725 or 840,000 EUR wells. I know I don't have information on the one well, but 7.4 million pounds of sand over 30 stages. So in summary, Rich pointed out very clearly, we've got the rock. As Rich pointed out, we've got a couple of vertical wells that are going to make 50,000 barrels of oil. One of them's already cumed about 20,000. So we've got the rock. It's consistent. 50,000 barrels of oil. It's full of oil. And it's just a classic case of technology improvements. And as I said, the San Juan Basin, as you know, it's just a little bit behind the times because the acreage positions weren't really available. So if somebody can get in here and get a good acreage position like these recent operators, they're going to exploit the basin just like every other basin. They're figuring it out. And then I'll summarize real briefly, as Rich pointed out, in your area, your acreage, what I think we had 252 laterals. Those are primarily 1 mile laterals that we've modeled. Ultimately, if you've got the acreage, you'll get efficiencies by going bigger laterals. But when you add it all up, I think I ran it at $45 oil. Yeah, you're looking at $500 million play, and that's kind of an NPV 15.
Okay, let me shift to one couple of questions I'm going to combine here. Someone asked about how we are lease-wise, and we're relatively fully leased out there. Do we anticipate any delays in permitting, leasing? As far as some of the federal leases, a lot of those are Fed open. We have an expression of interest on those, and that's just going to go through the mill and through the political process. We'll just have to, in our western northern unit, we'll just have to drill not through those areas. And there's just a couple cases of those. So the adverse political conditions are a reality. We are, as I mentioned in my intro, going to exercise our valid existing lease rights out there. So we plan to do that. Another question was about our lease position. 40% of the land is fee, 40% is HBP, and that's fee and federal. We do have some expiring federal July and January next year, July of 22, and then January of 23, about 6,500 acres. That's why we're trying to keep that's why we're doing the unitization process there. Our NRIs are 79 to 80%. So we think we're in a good area. I mean, this is a bypassed area. There's less sexy areas, and there's a credible history of success in the San Juan Basin in these areas. A couple areas like ours come to mind. I think of the Dugan, South Bisti and Bisti, that he would go out and drill wells, saving leases. He drilled PCs, and that initially was a small operator project, and lo and behold, new technology comes along, and he did the deal of the century about 12 years ago with the Mancos horizontal drilling in the San Juan Basin, the deal he did with Encana. So another one I think is the Caracas area on the Colorado New Mexico border in the Carson Forest. My dad's company in 1989 formed a 30,000 acre federal exploratory unit. And his company, NASA, began acquiring acreage in 1987. It was really a hard time to drill for the Fruitland coal bed. And it was especially out of the Fruitland Fairway. So this is a Colorado border here. You can see at the top of the map. Like I'm doing in Lindrith, my dad persisted when investors weren't flocking to his project in Caracas. With a new set of investors and some family and friends money and a larger energy company, he gets the first 70 wells drilled. And you can see the value when he started that was $0 in 1988. He gets the first 70 wells drilled. He lays water, gas gathering in the same ditch and develops it through the 90s, roads gathering. He won an environmental award for all the process in the Carson Forest. So he gets it up to about 9 million feet of gas a day and up until about 2000. And at that time, he divested to a large independent, Vastar, which became Amoco, which became BP. So they then turn it to a large independent, BP did in around 2004. This large independent comes in with money. They develop Caracas with advanced technologies. So the $19 million divestiture in 2000, they get the production up to 30 million a day with horizontal drilling and all that. So, you know, this is an amazing personal story of the bypassed San Juan Basin. What I think is interesting about this, and the large independent divests, and we estimated this this past week for $225 million in 2014. So if you want to get into a blue chip basin and a long-term project, the San Juan is a great place to be. This place is all about the rock, exploiting the Mancos potential. We think we're going to be needing oil and gas for the foreseeable future. It's not going away with this project, and we're really going to put ourselves in a great position to drill next year. The consistency of the rocks in the Mancos members are in line with success in the south central San Juan Basin. We, again, appreciate you spending time with us to see about this amazing project and invite you to examine further through our virtual data room, see how it might suit you. So as we mentioned at the onset, well, I'm looking for a partner to join us in taking us to the next level or selling outright. So like Duncan said, full-scale development is the way to tackle this Lindrith Mancos area. And again, Rich, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Duncan, for contributing. And especially thank you, Lori Walters, for organizing all the production we did today and keeping things moving at San Juan Resources. And thank you all, attendees and listeners, and have a great day.